All right. Hello, everybody. Let's get started. Our speaker today is Faris. He is the founder of the Salt Lake City Python Meetup and the head Python janitor at Team. He's going to talk to us about meetups. Take it away, Faris.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Everybody having a good PyCon? Yeah. So welcome to the biggest meetup of them all, PyCon 2019. I'm hoping everybody's having a good time today. Yeah, this is my little talk. I have a quick poll before we get started. Who here has attended a meetup? Yeah, like pretty much everybody in the audience. I dig it. Now keep your hand up if it was a Python meetup. A few, still a few, okay. And then now keep your hand if you've helped organize a Python meetup. Excellent. I want all these people who are still raising their hands, after this, like give them a pat on the back, because this stuff is hard, okay? This is the human side of stuff. So yeah, let's get started here. First off, who am I? I started the Salt Lake City Python meetup group accidentally. I think that's how a lot of people start their groups, is accidentally. I'm a big fan of the Django meetup in Vancouver. That was one of the ones I used to go to a lot. And anybody from Vancouver, Canada? Yeah, up in here. And then the bad old days of the Salt Lake Linux users group, they were good old days. Yeah, I started the meetup group in a coffee shop when I saw a couple individuals sitting there with their laptop with the Django admin tools open up. And I was like, hey, is that Django? Are you guys doing some Django programming? Let's talk about this. And we realized there wasn't a meetup group that was that close to us. So let me show you a little bit of Utah's geography. So this is Utah right here. We're the one that's not on fire at present. So this is pretty much what the summer looks like. No, we get lots of fires too. If you're trying to avoid burnout in the valley and Pacific Northwest, you can literally avoid it by going to Utah sometimes, it looks like. But yeah, we're this state over here. A little bit about our first Salt Lake City meetup. Oh dear, it's the wrong slide for some reason. Yeah, my apologies here. Okay, that slide's not showing up. So I'm going to point it out over here. So the original meetup used to be all the way down here. And here's downtown Salt Lake City. Okay, so our first meetup, we decided to restart in a little lovely named neighborhood called Sugar House. Yes, that is literally the name of the neighborhood. Utah's quite a fantasy place. And now we're at the University of Utah. We just call this the U. They're very picky about calling it the U, okay? And then I have to give a few disclaimers. So I've been thinking about this talk for like 3 years, and I finally submitted it, and then I ended up getting bought by WeWork, like our company was bought by WeWork, and as you might know, WeWork also owns Meetup. So this is my legal disclaimer. I'm not speaking on behalf of WeWork or Meetup. This is Faris right here talking to his fellow Pythonistas. So only giving my personal experiences. You might have your own ideas, and we're going to talk about that in room 16 at 16 o'clock after this. So we're going to have like there's a secondary thing. If you're an organizer, I encourage you to go. If you go to meetups, I encourage you to go. And we can have more discussion about that. So who here has ever gotten this email right here? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, you're like, my meetup group's going to shut down. All those people, all that Python, all those lessons. I'm going to have to drive like 4 or 5 hours away to go to another meetup group, if that. And who knows if that's going to work out. So you do what anybody does, and you click that giant red button to keep the meetup going. And you're going to keep this group going. And you know what? It's just going to be easy. You just have to find a space and pizza, and you have to keep track of money. Uh-oh. You're going to need some help. Because guess what? You're now the organizer of a meetup group. And this is exactly what happened to me more than 5 years ago. And I have some, like, number one thing that you should get out of this talk. Guess what? It's going to be okay. Okay? You're at this presentation. So let's go over a quick checklist. So first things first. If you're taking over a meetup, you should do these 3 things. Okay? First thing you should do is you're going to ensure that your meetup ensure that your dues are paid, obviously, but you're also going to chat with the old organizer. Why are they stepping down? It could be the case that there's just a glitch, they're changing their email, or they click the wrong button and then they immediately hop back on 5 minutes later. But good for you for clicking that red button anyway and trying to snatch that meetup. And yes, this did actually happen to me as well. We're just like, oh, I'm going to do this other meetup. No, they were just doing something. They still wanted to run the meetup. Make sure your dues are paid. And reintroduce yourself to the members. So once you click that button, you're going to get a bunch of meetup tools. One of them's email your members. Email them. Let them know who you are. Let them know that, hey, this meetup's going to keep going. And that last point could be tricky, okay? Because you're putting yourself out in the world. And if you're not really ready to do that, maybe don't organize a meetup quite yet, but keep going to them. That's my advice there. And one more thing, you got to plan and schedule your next meetup. Make sure that is ready to go. Don't do it immediately. Give yourself like 4 weeks, but you're going to have to plan, and we're going to go through how to do that as well. And again, seriously, it's going to be okay. And you know why that is? Because Python has a superpower. Does anybody know what it is? Is it the interpretation? No. Is it the ubiquity? Kinda. But what's the greatest superpower of Python? It's the community. Yeah, who said that? You said that. Yes, thank you. So you being here today, right now, it shows that you recognize this, okay? It's the second best language for everything but the community. It's the #1 in community. I've been to other conferences where they reference PyCon and the Python community as an exemplar community of what they want for their standards. So here's a picture, by the way. This is our soiree we hold every year. This is our community. This is our little Salt Lake City Python community. We have a once-a-year anniversary. I have to tell you, these 27 Pythonistas who made it, we made it through a foot of snow. This was some of the worst snowfall that we had that day, and it just happened to coincide with our 5th-year anniversary, and they all made it. So the Python community is awesome. And what that means is that if you're part of a community of programmers, that means that programming isn't the thing anymore. Programming is just a tool. We shouldn't call ourselves programmers. We should call ourselves whatever we're doing. You don't call somebody who pours cement like a cement pourer, you call them a landscaper, right? The cement pouring is just a tool in their tool belt. It's the same thing. We have lots of examples now. Katie Bowman, she did her continuous high resolution image reconstruction using patch priors, aka the Chirp project, and now we're able to see a black hole. How cool is that? And that's Python, and that's the community, right? There's also an art scene that's coming up around Python. This was a commissioned piece of art for our meetup. There you go, beautiful is better than ugly. 801 is our little area code. There's our little snake. And this was commissioned art, and this is a shout out to @deadbinky on Twitter and Instagram. She does a lot of work involving skulls and snakes, so we just had to have her do our t-shirt logo. And the other thing, Python's awesome, and Pythonistas are awe-inspiring. So the people part, that's the hard part, and that's what your job as the organizer is to make sure that Python keeps going. So to do that, you have to make sure that humans keep going. And Python wouldn't be the language today if it wasn't for the community. We said that enough. So one thing that I feel like people have started to forget in this age of, social everything all the time, like I'm literally getting a notification because I forgot to mute it before the talk. Software is for people, right? It's for people, not computers. And you probably are going to hear this a number of times at this conference. When we're thinking about software for people, this is how you can get that exchange of a diverse set of ideas. And now you get to orchestrate a community experience. Now, what's a community experience? It's any gathering of people, okay? And all of you, pretty much, have taken place in a community experience of PyCon, but what are some other ones? Airports, rodeos. You've all been to a rodeo, right? Well, you should go to a rodeo, okay? And PyCon, of course. This is a community experience. And what you should take from that is that your meetup is just a small-scale PyCon. Okay? It's just a small-scale community experience that you get to facilitate. And remember, community defines Python. So how do you run a successful meetup given all that? First thing you're going to do is you're going to go to meetups or go to PyCon. And guess what? You're already here. Isn't that great? So now what you need to do is absorb your experience. Seriously, it's just like how when you practice the same thing over and over without trying to improve, without studying what you're getting wrong, you're never going to do well with that. So what you have to do at this PyCon, if you want to start your own meetup, absorb your experience right now. For example, I'm a speaker, right? But before I came up here, I was coached by our awesome session chair over here. And this is the result of a lot of people coming together. We have our cameraman, we have our sound, we have somebody interpreting the words coming out of my mouth right now. Thank you very much. And you should think about what's your favorite experience at PyCon and what do you want to copy from that? And you're going to copy it because that's what we do. We copy that experience and we make it better. And isn't that all we do with code? I mean, who copies code from GitHub? Come on, yeah, or Stack Overflow. It's the same thing. You're going to be doing the same thing, but with a community experience. Now, I'm going to give you a bunch of advice right now that are my personal advice that I think makes a successful meetup and will keep that meetup going. So the first one would be you want to keep a consistent date, okay? You're going to start with no more than one meetup a month and be sure it's at the same time every month. So for example, it should be one sentence. Salt Lake City Python meets on the first Wednesday of each month at the University of Utah. Great, that's your one sentence pitch to everybody. And this is my chance, even though this is a very, it's a softer, less technical talk, I'm going to do some live Python right here. Yeah. So the date util library, learned a lot about this at the tutorial. And render that, and there we go. So this is how you would interpret in Python when our meetup group meets. I just thought I'd nerd out a little bit with everybody, with my people. Venue. So venue is one of the trickiest things that you're going to need if you're going to have a successful meetup. This is probably one of those hard problems that you don't think about until you realize that a meetup is like a fourth dimensional space, and I need a time and a place. And it can be really hard to get. So here's some ideas. First one that everybody seems to forget about in our field for whatever reason is your local library. Okay, libraries, who's been to a library in the last 3 years? Okay, I'm digging it. It's with my people. But what I'm saying is that libraries, they're not just about books anymore. They have 3D printers. Ours has a telescope checkout system, so you can literally check out a telescope. They have lessons for kids, lots of summer coding camps for kids now. And you can involve yourself in that. That's just one more community experience that you get to enrich in. Your local college or university, we were very lucky to have the University of Utah actually reach out to us and offer a space every month. Another potential one is to reach out to local companies with the intention of maintaining that consistent location. So for example, there's the new startups that are always going on. We have a data engineering meetup in Salt Lake City, and they decided we're going to be based out of Pluralsight. It's a consistent location, great for their venue, and it works. Another one is the WeWork Community Associate or Community Lead of Hospitality. And here's the disclaimer though, there's no WeWorks in Salt Lake City yet, so I've never run one out of there. But I know that WeWork is pushing this, so this might be a nice ticket in. If there's a WeWork next to you, go talk to their Community Associate or Community Lead of Hospitality. They'll give you some good advice on that. So the next thing you're gonna need is somebody like me who can just talk, apparently. You're gonna need presenters. By the way, this is Ken Myers. This is one of the individuals who is sitting on the Django toolbar. He focuses more on ETL and database stuff, but he was still able to give a really good talk about data modeling in Python. And to find those speakers, you need to realize every meetup that you host, it's an opportunity to find those speakers. You need to encourage your members to step up and try giving a talk. I didn't just come to PyCon all of a sudden. I've been giving talks at my meetup and other meetups. And it's the same with most of the speakers here. They started at a meetup, okay? And the last point, you're likely going to be the first speaker at your meetup. Sorry, not sorry, because it is a fun experience to do that. But at the same time, it can be a little bit intimidating. Next point, sponsorship and money. This is something that I didn't realize would actually be kind of important to keep track of. Who'd have known? Running a good meetup is the key to getting that sponsorship. If you run a good meetup, that sponsorship's easy. And I have 3 guidelines for this, and it's going to solve 99% of your issues. The first one is you're going to want to make sure that you have a specified time slot for your sponsors, because they're going to want to take over the meetup, whether it's recruiter or something. We all love recruiter calls, don't we? Or recruiter emails. No, nobody loves those. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that you tell them the rules. You tell them, hey, we're going to give you 3 minutes to do a spiel. Don't let them dominate the conversation. And use open accounting. This is our open accounting right here. If you go to meetup.com/slcpython/money right now, you can see all of our accounting up through February. Yeah, I fell behind on this because I was working on this talk. But that's where it is. All of the accounting's on the books. On top of that, I'm happy to report, I didn't know this until a couple days ago, because I have some awesome members working on it. As of Monday, we're a 501c3. So that's where you can get, if you keep track of the money right. Yeah, thank you. This gentleman over here. Another thing, most important thing, is you need to be human. Okay, we're all bags of meat trying to make our way through this world. Get rid of that robot side of you for just a second and realize this one thing. A good tech meetup, it's 20% tech and 80% networking. Another thing you'll need to do in order to remember that, keep going to other meetups. This is something I personally neglected to do when I first started. I'm just a little bit burned out by trying to, maintain a brand new Salt Lake City Python meetup. We went from 80 members to 2,500 members in the course of 5 years. So yeah, it can get a little burned out, but at the same time, there's some other meetups that you can check out. They don't have to be tech meetups. There was a Skeptic Society meetup that I found fascinating. Different group of people, different format, but I still got some ideas and I was able to port them into our meetup. Another thing, there's lots of things I'm talking about today. Never ever forget that everybody starts out with the ability to use tech, okay? One thing that's amazing about this community, the tech community, it surpasses race, gender, creed. It welcomes everybody. And we know this, we're at PyCon, but make sure that your meetup is also an example of this. Make sure that your meetup is a place where somebody can become a better human being. So, given all this, what's a basic agenda look like? An agenda is key to a good meetup. It looks kind of like this. So here's a link. For some reason, Bitly didn't work for me today, so the link's up here. I also linked I pinned these slides to my Twitter profile, so we can catch those later. But let's go through our meetup agenda. So first thing I like to do is we do our networking and pizza. This is a great time to introduce yourself to new members and introduce them to other members. While you're doing these intros and sponsors, you're going to talk about other local meetups because, again, you're trying to get that network effect going. This is also a chance to for your sponsors to have their plug, and you can give their spiel for them. For example, X Missions, our local-friendly organic ISP, they've been sponsoring us for the last 2 years, so we always give them a quick shout-out, and it's just like that. There's their shout-out. Next thing you're going to want to do while you're doing introductions, you're going to be looking at who's hiring. Okay, this is another opportunity. Once you start this meetup, you're going to get a lot of meetup.com messages. And take that opportunity to say, come to the meetup. That's where you can start advertising for jobs, and things like that. Again, this is just a slice of PyCon, right? We're just taking that slice of PyCon. We have a job fair coming up, what is it, Sunday, right? So we have our job fair on Sunday. It's the same thing. We're just taking a slice of something that works, put it in your meetup. Next thing, who's looking? And this is a great opportunity to get those Pythonistas to give their spiel about themselves. One kudos that I like about our tech community in Utah, we tend to have more people who are hiring than looking, which is phenomenal. And then you talk about community news. So, for example, you can talk about local community news. This isn't actually happening. Guido's not coming to Utah. That would be awesome if he was, but it's just an example. And then you can talk about global community news, like Python 4. This is happening. No, I'm just kidding. It's not happening either. Again, both of this is fake news. So much fake news. Talks. Again, this is just PyCon, but smaller. There's some differences, though. What you're going to need to do is you're going to have to give that first talk, as I said, and I believe in you in giving this talk. And you're also going to make sure that your first talk is a beginner talk. So what we've changed formats in the last 18 months, where our first 15 to 20 minutes, myself or one of my colleagues will just sit and answer general Python questions. We'll show you how to install VS Code and Anaconda and things like that. Because we have a lot of Windows users. I'm just a Mac user, but I used to be, a Mac user, or sorry, I'm a Linux user. And we have a lot of Windows users, and I could never answer for them, how do they get started? How do they learn Python? I said, well, let's just do a beginner talk, and we'd work through that stuff. Your members' first talks, you're going to coach those. So once they say, hey, I'm going to be your speaker for June 3rd or whatever the next meetup is, you keep in touch with them. Touch base with them every weekend to make sure that they know that, yeah, this stuff's hard, but this is what they can improve on with their slides. This is some other things that people have talked about, and it'll come easy. Another piece of advice that I like to give to everybody, take a chance to record and stream your meetups as soon as you can. We neglected to do this for our first year, so this is a lesson that we learned. And in retrospect, it would have been very handy to be able to interact with more than just our local tech community. Another example of why this is important, Nina, who is going to be our keynote speaker, she actually did one of her first talks at our little meetup. OBS is a great program for this, by the way, obsproject.com. If you don't know how to use OBS, just find any 12-year-old who likes to stream Fortnite, and they will teach you how to run OBS for your meetup. Next thing that we do, well, at the very end, after the talks, is we'll do raffle prizes. So here's an orange pie. An orange pie, it's just like a Raspberry Pi, but you can buy more than 3 of them online, so that's pretty awesome. Next thing, this isn't part of the agenda, but this is something that we do every year. Once a year, we need to come through and celebrate your members and their community. What's really great about this is it's a good opportunity to do fundraising, to do network building, but also it's an opportunity for your meetup members to bring their spouses, people who normally wouldn't go to a technical meetup, and realize, oh, this is what you've been doing every month? Like, what is this? It's just a lot of cake. And yes, there's a lot of cake during our soirees. So this is our very first one. This is last minute, can you tell? It was a cookie that had some whipped cream slapped on top. This is our first year anniversary. And as the years go by, our cake gets better and better. And for some reason, I'm missing all my other cake slides, but that's okay. Yeah, and that's what I was going to talk about with that. Another place, as I said before when I started this talk, we're going to have an open space at PyCon right after this talk for more involved questions. I want to hear from you what's working. It's going to be room 16 at 16 o'clock. And there's some more resources and inspiration. This is the Python wiki on starting your users group. I've taken some advice on that. I've tweaked a bit of the advice on that because I found it didn't work. But it's another good start, another good place to look. I'm nearing the end of my talk now. Let's give a special thanks, though. This is Dylan on the left. So he's run the last 2 meetups. So I think what I'm talking about kind of works if he was able to take this and keep our meetup going, even though I'm at PyCon this year. I can't count the number of times that Dylan has also stepped up and given a talk when one of our speakers just dropped or we didn't have enough to speak about that meetup. And yeah, so thank you, Dylan. And we can do an AMA perhaps in the hallway. How are we on time, by the way? My clock just stopped on this thing, so. 7 minutes? Okay. Yeah, we'll do an AMA after this, but one thing real quick, if you're ever in Salt Lake City, I encourage you, be my guest, please come to a meetup, meetup.com/slcpython. We're more than happy to have you, and thank you for coming here and listening and trying to improve the Python community. And I'm more than happy to answer some questions at the microphone if somebody had some.
5 minutes for questions, so please step up to the audience microphones if you have any questions.
Hi.
Hello.
So great talk, thank you. I had a question about platform for how you organize these things. Everyone seems to use meetup.com, which is a really handy site, but it's not the only game in town. And I know that there's another site called gettogether.community, I believe, which is meant to be like an open federated version of Meetup. I don't know if there are other options out there as well. Do you know anything about this, and do you have any thoughts about alternate platforms?
So again, I'm speaking for myself because technically I'm an employee of the same ones as Meetup. I personally have enjoyed using Meetup because it's been around since forever. I mean, I used Meetup before Facebook, so that's why I knew about Meetup. Facebook is another place to go, but I don't have an account, and a lot of people don't. I don't know about, what was the federated?
Gettogether.community.
Gettogether.community. I will need to check that out. No, platform-wise, Meetup, the #1 feature I like as an organizer is it gives you some tools to grow. It gives you ways to print name tags, and it lets you do open accounting, which is just a killer feature for me. But if Gettogether has that, I'll definitely check it out. Thanks for the question.
Sure.
Are there other questions? Oh.
Thoughts or resources on establishing a code of conduct for a new meetup?
That's a good question. So the question was, are there any thoughts or resources for establishing a code of conduct? To which the answer is, we literally link the Python code of conduct. And we say, you follow this one and you're good. When it comes to enforcement of that code of conduct, we've only had to do enforcement action once. And in that case, it was just a conversation the next day. I bought the guy lunch. I went through, hey, what you said to this person, it can be misconstrued. I'm gonna ask that you don't go to this meetup for the next one, but after that, things worked out. So that's what we do, is we follow the Python code of conduct. But that's an excellent question. Yes?
Thanks, appreciate the talk. I was wondering if you could comment on finding presenters and the challenges there, because that seems to be one of the big challenges as a person organizing conferences. And another question, as you're organizing this, a lot of people are organizing this, would it be valuable to have a space where people who organize meetups could get together virtually to share stories, or even like an onboarding process to be a meetup leader?
So your second point is a fantastic idea, I have to say. Perhaps after this, we can look into making a Slack group or something, because Slack is literally here, so we can just beg them for a free workspace or something. To your first point, finding presenters is difficult. A lot of the time, they will end up coming to you as you get going, but that initial hurdle, it's tricky. A lot of my initial presenters were coworkers and people I knew from other meetups. So that's why I encourage you to go to other meetups before you get started. This gentleman over here, and then we'll go back.
Is this on? Yeah. So sponsors for meetups. Oftentimes the sponsors want the meetup to be in their space because it's often a hiring tool, and getting people into the space is a huge boon to recruiting. But that kind of goes against your consistent location principle. What are your thoughts on that, and how have you handled that when it's come up?
So we consider the University of Utah to be a sponsor. We have looked into the fee that they would normally charge for the use of a room, and we just do, in our accounting, we'll do plus minus. And we put the University of Utah, they get the same spiel time as anybody else, and we just give them kudos. If the company that is looking to sponsor in their location wants to do more than that, arrange it ahead of time. But I honestly think that as long as you're focusing on your participants and Pythonistas, the rest will come naturally. Again, this is a rule of thumb. Your mileage may vary, but that's what's worked for us. Yes?
Do you have any big shocks from going as a meetup participant to a meetup starter, especially if you start a meetup from scratch and not take it over from someone else?
That's a good question. On Wednesday, I was missing a meetup, and Dylan was really nice, and he set up a video chat. And what was phenomenal to me, the big shock, was it was the first time I'd organized something that didn't rely on me, on one individual. That community could keep going, and they set up a video chat, so I could keep chatting from like a hotel in downtown Cleveland and say, hey, everybody, like we got 501c3. Isn't that great news? So that was one of the biggest shocks. That's a good question. Thank you.
Is this?
Yeah, you mentioned Dylan is your co-organizer. How deep is your bench of co-organizers? I travel a lot, so is that just not suitable for someone who travels a lot to co-organize a meetup, or do you just have a lot deeper bench, and how deep that needs to be?
That's a good question. This year I've traveled more than I have, I feel like, in my entire life. And Dylan has stepped up. My bench right now is probably, there are 2 people I could rely on other than myself to run this meetup. But that's a good question. It's something I'll personally need to think about.
Hello. What do you find most effective for communicating to the community for turnout, like frequency, initial kind of messaging, like, hey, this meetup is happening, and reminder, we have a meetup tomorrow?
So the most effective one, initially this doesn't work, but the most effective is having that consistent date and time and location. But if you can make sure that your meetup is that slot, the first Wednesday of every month. And the other thing is we accidentally bumped up against the big data user group in Utah is also the first Wednesday. So I don't know, we've been stealing from them, but not intentionally.
I guess what I mean is on messaging, communicating out to the audience. Like, let's say you have an established time, and then where, like what we do is I communicate out a week before, I open up the meetup a week before, and then I switch between either 2 days before or the day before, remind people, hey, we have a meetup in 2 days or we have a meetup tomorrow.
Okay. We're really lucky. I don't have to do that. There is a Twitter bot in Salt Lake City that will find meetups that are tech, and it will automatically tweet a week before saying, hey, are you going to this meetup? It's going to be about this. Sometimes it gets it wrong, like, this meetup's going to be about the 5th anniversary soiree. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense. And then it'll also tweet the day before. So a number of our members follow that bot. In addition, whenever we have announcements, I try to, every quarter, do kind of a state of the meetup email to all of our participants. Good question, thank you.
All right, that's all the time we have. Let's give Faris another round of applause.
Thank you very much.